Xiao and Venti are two of Genshin Impact's most beloved and complex characters, each carrying centuries of history and heavy burdens. Xiao, the Guardian of Liyue. Xiao is an adeptus tasked with defending Liyue from demons, monsters, and lingering evil spirits that emerge from the remnants of defeated gods. He's the last surviving Yaksha. They were powerful warriors summoned by Rex Lapis to purge evil. Over the centuries, this duty has left him emotionally scarred, weighed down by karmic debt, and a near-constant state of isolation. Despite his cold demeanor, Xiao is not emotionless. He's cautious with others. Not because he doesn't care, but because he does. Deeply. He fears hurting the people he protects, and so he keeps his distance, always watching from the shadows. Venti, the bard who watches over Mondstadt. Venti, while cheerful and mischievous on the surface, is far more than a carefree musician. He's actually the Anemo Archon, Barbados, one of the 7. As the god of freedom, Venti refuses to rule over his people directly, preferring to let Mondstadt flourish without divine interference. He often plays the role of a wanderer and a storyteller, but this light-hearted persona hides centuries of loneliness and wisdom. He's one of the oldest beings in Teyvat, yet he rarely lets others see the full weight of that. Now that we've looked at who Xiao and Venti are on their own, it's worth asking, why do these two characters who seem so different on the surface resonate so strongly when placed side by side? Their connection might not be spelled out in bold text by the game itself, but when you pay attention to the details, the parallels begin to emerge. Their stories echo each other in subtle but powerful ways. And while their screen time together might be limited, the moments they do share have an impact. This is what makes so many people love the ship XiaoVen. In this video, we'll dive into their lore and canonical interactions, explore the deeper themes that link them, and look at how the fandom has expanded their story through theories and fanworks. Let's take a closer look at their lore interactions. One of the most significant canonical moments connecting Xiao and Venti occurs long before the traveler enters the story. This scene is described in Xiao's character story 5, and referenced in event dialogue and lore books. At some point in the distant past, Xiao, who was still bound by his karmic debt, was worn down by the endless suffering and the pain of the countless slain souls. That's when he found himself in Dihua Marsh, collapsing on the ground in agony. At that moment, something unexpected happened. A sound of a flute, that is described as clear and lovely, carried by the winds to Xiao. His pain stopped, his mind quieted. He was able to breathe and have a moment of peace. He didn't see the player of the flute, but he knew it had to be one of the 7 Archons. It's made clear that this bard who saved Xiao's life was Venti, which we can actually see in the Yaksha's The Guardian Adepti animated teaser, which released 6 days before Xiao himself. In this teaser, we can see Venti, alone and under a moonlit sky, sitting on a peak above Qingyun, or Dihua, playing his flute. As his music flows out into the world, we can see how Xiao's suffering visibly eases. He's still. That moment saved his life. Zhongli said that during nights like these, by the player of that flute, Xiao's memory is preserved, which makes it seem like moments like these probably happen more often than we think. It's also important to know that in the actual Chinese translation, this means that it's not only about the son of the flute, but the actual player of it, so Venti himself. He clearly remembers Venti and his song, a scene in his voice line about Venti, where he says the iconic line,
Venti? So that's the name he goes by. His tunes are... forget it.
He didn't know Venti's name, but clearly remembered the person who saved him, and their music. The flute isn't just a one-time event. It becomes a reoccurring symbol of healing and connection for Xiao. In multiple pieces of lore, the music reappears. In the Guardian Adepti lore book, it's noted that locals sometimes hear flute music in the hills around Dihua Marsh, usually around Lantern Rite. Many assume this is Xiao himself, warding off evil, but those who know the deeper story, especially we as the players, can recognize that it's likely Venti's continued visits, where he's checking in on Xiao. We don't know for sure if this is actually Venti or Xiao himself playing, But regardless, it's still a reference to him. If it is actually Xiao himself, this means that Venti's flute influenced and helped him so much that he picked up the art of playing himself. Or that he even wants to reenact the moment that saved him. It might even be Venti himself who taught Xiao how to play the flute. We can only speculate. But we can actually see Xiao play the flute twice. First, in an ad from 2021, and then again in the Genshin concert promotional video from 2023. We can see Xiao playing on a flute that looks suspiciously similar to Venti's. They have the same red tassel and jade pendant on them. Jade pendants traditionally symbolize good fortune and are believed to ward off negative energy and harm from its wearer. It's also believed that purchasing jade for yourself might inflict bad luck or disrupt the positive energy. So it's traditional to receive jade jewelry as a gift, where the gift giver bestows their well wishes and protection onto you. Of course, this is only a theory, but it is entirely possible that Venti gifted this flute to Xiao as a sign of his protection and care. Xiao actually also has a jade pendant on his outfit. And I just thought I'd mention this here as a cute extra because Venti likes matching things, as mentioned in his About the Vision voice line. It's also a very popular theory from many fans that the OST you can hear in Qingyun Peak at night is actually Xiao, calling out to his dead friends. Either through a flute or through real bird sounds from Xiao himself. We haven't actually seen his bird form yet, but a lot of fans believe in this theory. This would relate back to the Venti taught him how to play theory. Xiao's special dish, Sweet Dream, reads, his dream is very simple, and it is merely a lovely dream. And we actually know what his dream is, because this is most definitely a reference to his name card. In Xiao's name card mask, or the more accurate translation, Mask of Exorcism, it reads that he longs for a day to come when he will wear the mask and dance, not to conquer demons, but to the tune of that flute amid a sea of flowers. By that flute, it's pretty obvious that he means Venti's flute. It's his greatest wish to hear Venti play the flute once more and to dance to the music. Maybe even with him. The sea of flowers he mentioned in the English translation is Huazhou, which is spelled in the same way as Dihuazhou, which is the original name of Dihua Marsh. The Dihua Marsh, or the Wangshu Inn, is famously the place where Xiao rests at. Zhongli confirms during the Lantern Rite of 2022 that there are multiple reasons as to why Xiao frequents the inn, one of those being his duties. But another reason might very well be Venti and his music. It's also worth mentioning that the Dihua Marsh and the Wangshu Inn are known as a haven for lovers' moonlit rendezvous. So it's a pretty romantic place. And Xiao longs for him and Venti to be there, together, dancing and playing the flute. I can't imagine a more romantic scene like that. Xiao himself will never speak about this desire out loud though. We know this because in the voice line about his vision, he says,
I'm hiding nothing. I just won't speak of desire to others. Do you mortals not have a rule about spoken wishes never coming true?
As he's likely afraid that his lovely dream is never gonna come true if he does. During the Lantern Rite in 2023, the traveler notices that Xiao seems pretty quiet and asks him if everything is okay, to which Xiao then quietly reveals to the traveler that he met someone a few days earlier. He doesn't name the person directly. Instead, he simply says,
I met an old friend. Thanks to his help, things have been a lot more stable than before.
Xiao doesn't call people friends lightly. In fact, the only people he's ever referred to this way are the traveler and now this unnamed figure. Right after this, Venti enters the scene, and it's clear that this is the friend Xiao meant. He's shocked that Venti is suddenly here, but still looks quite soft. After Venti enters, he talks to everyone else, and they all look at him during those conversations, aside from one person, Xiao. When Zhongli starts a conversation with him, Venti diverts the topic to Xiao really fast. When Xiao then finally looks at him, he looks a little flustered to me. I don't know if I'm the only one seeing this, but look at him. Xiao then talks about how they already met a few days earlier, and kinda needs Venti's help to not give away his true identity, because Xiao doesn't know what to say. He also stumbled over his words, which will be important in a minute, so remember that. We can actually see their meeting in the Endless Suffering teaser, in which Venti invites Xiao to a drink, but Xiao declines, because tonight he just wants to rest. At first, that might sound like a rejection, but the phrasing "not tonight" implies that there have been or could be other nights where they've met like this. Because this whole scene feels entirely too casual if they didn't, especially for Xiao. He admits that Venti's tunes once again made him feel relaxed and at ease, and Venti seems really happy after this revelation. When Hu Tao and Venti shake hands, Xiao gives a little grunt in response, which could make it seem like he's a little jealous, potentially. When Paimon asks Venti why he's even in Liyue in the first place, Venti says that he's heard about the music festival and wants to take a look. We can see the travelers in a monologue, which tells us that the music festival wasn't planned beforehand. So he most definitely came for other reasons. Considering that he already met Xiao a few days prior, it's not out of the question to say that the reason why he was there was Xiao. When the traveler and Xiao walk outside by themselves, Xiao says that he's used to these types of gatherings, but that it's a bit different this time. The traveler then has two dialogue options. We can either blame it on Zhongli, where Xiao will get very defensive, or blame it on Venti. When you choose Venti, he starts stumbling over his words again. Remember when I mentioned this earlier? For Xiao, who's usually calm, composed, and even emotionally repressed, this kind of flustered behavior is really rare and not normal. Great. Now that we've established their entire canon lore, it's time to touch upon some popular fan theories. I want to start with the symbolic meaning of their flowers and how they're tied to their characters and quietly reflect their emotional connection. This theory is beautifully outlined in a Twitter thread by XiaoVen posts, so many thanks to them. Both Xiao and Venti are constantly surrounded and depicted with their respective flowers, so it's safe to say that the flowers represent them, in a way. The description of the Cecilia says, "just as intangible as the true hearts of an unbound soul." And in an old character spotlight about Venti from 2019, we also get the quote, "the true feelings of the prodigal son." Both descriptions obviously tying back directly to Venti, who, despite his playful demeanor, carries the weight of Mondstadt's history and the loss of his friend. Xiao's flower, the Xingxin, says, "to gaze out afar from the solitary mountains." This represents how Xiao watches over the people of Liyue from afar. Both Xiao and Venti do this, and while their methods are different, and Venti is able to hide his feelings under a mask, they both still feel very lonely, which the isolated nature of both of their flowers might represent, because we know that both flowers only grow on the highest peaks of Mondstadt and Liyue. So when Venti mentions that
it's good to take the mask off once in a while
in the Eternal Suffering teaser, he's most definitely referring to Xiao and himself, because as we've established, Venti wears the mask of a carefree mortal bard who's cheerful. But beneath his playful persona is Barbados, the Anemo Archon, burdened by centuries of grief, memory, and responsibility. He chooses not to rule directly, but that doesn't mean he lacks the wisdom or insight. As the traveler and Paimon observe, Venti is far more thoughtful and aware than he lets on. Xiao, on the other hand, wears a very different mask. The mask of the protector, the relentless warrior who never rests. Literally and symbolically, he dons his Yaksha mask to suppress his karmic debt, which constantly threatens to consume him. To mortals, he's a silent guardian, distant and strong, but that strength is a facade. He has to be perfect, stoic, sharp. He can't even show his weakness in front of enemies, humans, or even friends, because slipping up could mean losing himself. So when Venti says it's good to take the mask off once in a while, he's not just talking about Xiao's Yaksha mask, but also the metaphorical mask Venti himself wears, and their shared duty as immortals, expected to play roles for others while carrying quiet burdens. This shows that there's a deep level of understanding and care between the two that goes beyond the normal friendship. They also share some similarities in their visual design. Their color palettes both feature cool tones dominated by shades of green and teal, which symbolizes their connection to the Anemo element and nature. These colors evoke a sense of calm, wind, and freedom, which are core aspects of both their characters. Their outfits incorporate flowing fabrics and dynamic shapes that resemble wind. Venti's cloak and ribbons flutter with movement, and Xiao's sleeveless, layered design also conveys agility and grace. Even in gameplay, Xiao and Venti seem to reflect each other. Xiao's burst, bane of all evil, transforms him. He puts on his Yaksha mask, leaps high into the air, and plunges down aggressively in rapid strikes. But there's a cost. Every second he fights, he loses health. It's raw, chaotic, and self-sacrificial. Venti, on the other hand, is almost the opposite. His burst, Wind's Grand Ode, creates a swirling vortex of wind that draws enemies in. He looks almost effortless while doing it, graceful, like he's performing. He doesn't touch the enemies directly. Instead, he lets the wind do the work. Xiao descends with force, Venti lifts everything up. Xiao sacrifices himself to protect others, Venti guides from a distance, letting others breathe. Their fighting styles say everything about who they are and how they balance one another. Another popular theory is that this poem that we can find in the shrine after the poetry event, written by an unknown person, was actually written by Xiao. The poem says, 1,000 years, vicissitudes, once formed never aging, grace never forgotten, the fire yet burning. Mountains climb high and waters run deep. Strange fate, indeed, to once more meet. This poem could very well be written by him, especially considering that Xiao was standing next to a waypoint near the shrine during the event, and said that he wrote a poem and it made his heart feel much calmer. I want to talk about the last verse specifically. Strange fate, indeed, to once more meet. This isn't necessarily about Venti, but it would make sense, considering their lore together. They met in the past, where Venti saved Xiao, and then they meet again, maybe centuries later, where the Archon who saved his life suddenly goes by a different name, and they both live under different circumstances. This indeed is a strange fate, but it's still fate nonetheless. They had to meet again, which many fans actually theorized about before the Endless Suffering teaser released. And then Venti and Xiao did finally meet on screen, after such a long wait. So these are the major theories with lots of evidence. But now I'd like to mention a few minor moments that connect them. Okay, first, something that most people probably haven't noticed. During the Spectral Secrets event in 2.1, you could match up characters who could go on expeditions together. And one of these expeditions was called Romantically Inclined. Xiao and Venti were both rated up characters for this expedition. Another one of these minor connections are their birthday fan arts, specifically the ones from 2020, 2024, and 2025, because their arts for these years were respectively made by the same artists, and kinda match in a way. Same with the arts from 2022 and 2023. I personally think this is more of a cute little fun fact, rather than something that actually proves them as canon, because this is definitely somewhat of a stretch, but I still like to mention it nonetheless. Something else that XiaoVen fans went crazy about in 2023 was a TikTok posted by Xiao's English voice actress. Her and Venti's voice actress were together on Hawaii and filmed a silly TikTok where they used Xiao's and Venti's voices. I'm gonna show the TikTok to y'all right now.
Oh, I see you've started without me. Any rice wine for me?
No thanks. Tonight, I just want to rest.
It's good to take the mask off once in a while.
But tomorrow, I want to dance!
This doesn't seem like anything big at first, but she actually used the hashtag XiaoVen under that video, which started a wild discourse about XiaoVen being canon in the comments, and she actually liked a few of these comments. I don't know if she actually ships them, but if she does, that'd just be very cool. Okay, now that we've established all of that, one question remains. Why is the ship XiaoVen so hated or condemned by so many Genshin Impact players? Unfortunately, I don't have a clear answer on this. During early game in 2021, many fans didn't like the ship because they thought Xiao and Venti didn't know each other or had no big lore together, which we have already disproven. Another argument that I think is really silly is that Xiao and Venti look so similar that they must be related. I honestly still don't understand this and never will. This is definitely just a made-up argument by people who dislike the ship. I personally think that the biggest reason is just the shipping wars in the Genshin fandom. Because some people can get very passionate about their favorite ships. And unfortunately, one of many people's favorite ships, Xiao and the Traveler, involves Xiao. Unfortunately, once a ship becomes controversial online, especially on Twitter or TikTok, it often gets baseless hate piled on it repeatedly, regardless of actual content. And XiaoVen fell victim to this and became one of those targets around 2021 and 2022. Another thing that I kinda have to mention in this video is Yeetoldy, now known as Xiao, or the artist of Cherry Crush. They used to be the biggest XiaoVen artist in 2021 and created many great fan comics and fan arts. Unfortunately, they also fell victim to the XiaoVen hate and left the Genshin fandom because they got bullied relentlessly and people spread rumors about them. Like almost every popular creator, they had a controversy which didn't relate to XiaoVen, but also led to them quitting. Because apparently they commissioned a non-con Identity V fanfiction and used to be friends with pro-shippers or racists. I don't want to delve too deep into this topic, but I thought it's definitely important to mention Yeetoldy here, because they definitely did influence XiaoVen. I'm personally still a big fan of their work though. But let's return to the ship itself, because despite all the drama, the discourse, and even the pain that parts of this fandom have caused, XiaoVen is still a beloved ship by many fans. On AO3, a popular fanfiction website, their ship tag has 5,319 fanfictions, which is an incredible number, and just goes to show again how popular the ship actually is. It's the 5th most popular Genshin Impact ship on AO3, only topped by Zhongli x Child, Kaveh x Alhaitham, Rylsley x Neuvillette, and Diluc x Kaya. Unfortunately. It's so popular on there because it fits so many beloved tropes, including, but not limited to, eternal love, shared suffering, sun and moon, opposites attract, pining and oblivious, flirty and flustered, beauty and beast, soulmates, or fated, and so many more. In fact, so many that this doesn't seem like a coincidence at all. It's a theory of many that Hoyoverse was actually setting them up to have a romance, or at least a more intimate relationship, during the early days, where Genshin wasn't as popular, but later on scrapped the idea. At the end of the day, what makes XiaoVen special, and what keeps people writing, drawing, editing, and analyzing it, is the emotional depth that you might not see at first glance. It's the quiet intimacy that doesn't need words or demands and is fully based on presence. Xiao is the embodiment of duty, trauma, and isolation, while Venti is the embodiment of freedom, music, and memory. On the surface, they're opposites, but in truth, they mirror each other in many ways. They're immortals, burdened by the past, putting on faces for the world, while quietly longing for something real. Xiao, whose soul was lost, and Venti, who saved him, but doesn't push him or ask anything of him. They're perfect foils of each other. Xiao is the protector who stayed, and Venti is the one who gave up his home to give it freedom. People don't just ship them because they're cute. They ship them because they complement each other incredibly well. And everything about them is just so poetic and gentle. This was my stance on XiaoVen. I hope that this video helped some people to understand their emotional relationship, and I hope that y'all enjoyed this, because this was my first video ever. I'd really appreciate if you could give this video a like. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I actually wanted to include so much more, but because this video is already so long, I couldn't. I'm open to suggestions for my next videos, and I hope to see y'all again. Bye!